How did a single family survive the shifting tides of empire to become the world's longest reigning dynasty? It wasn't just through unyielding martial pride. This is an analytical look at the Mewar dynasty, a centuries-long masterclass in military evolution, tracing its transformation from static fortresses to asymmetric mountain warfare, and finally, a pragmatic pivot to diplomatic parmountcy. To survive, Mewar had to change its geographic posture entirely. For centuries, the flat plains offered prestige but left kingdoms exposed. Mewar's ultimate survival lay in abandoning static, flatland defense for the brutal, asymmetric advantages of the Aravalli mountains. They shifted their centers of gravity from the vulnerable plains of Chittor to mountain retreats like Gogunda, high-altitude bastions like Kumbhalgad, deep forest hideouts like Chavand, and the lake-shielded basin of Udaipur. The mid-16th century brought a crucible of catastrophic loss under Maharana Vikramaditya. Threatened by Bahadur Shah of Gujarat, desperation dictated Mewar's diplomacy. In 1533, Rani Karmavati traded the vital Ranthambore fort for a temporary truce, and a year later, sent a symbolic Rakhi to Mughal Emperor Humayun seeking an urgent alliance. But Mughal aid arrived too late. In 1535, the second Saka of Chittor unfolded. Rani Karmavati led the royal women into the fires of Johar, while Bagh Singh of Devaliya led a fatal, suicidal Kesariya charge into the enemy ranks. By 1536, internal collapse culminated in the assassination of the Maharana by the usurper Banvir. Enter Uday Singh, the man who would fundamentally reshape Mewar's survival strategy. After reclaiming his throne by defeating Banvir at the Battle of Mewari in 1540, Uday Singh prioritized pragmatism over pride. When Afghan Emperor Sher Shah Suri marched on Chittor in 1544, Uday Singh chose strategic submission, handing over the fort's keys to avoid total destruction. Then came the masterstroke. In 1559, acting on a monk's advice to completely abandon the vulnerable plains, he founded Udaipur deep within the defensible Girwa hills, building the Panedar and Moti Mahals. The validity of this new strategy was proven in blood during the third Saka of Chittor. When Akbar invaded in 1567, Uday Singh executed his new doctrine. He retreated to the safety of the Girwa hills, leaving commanders Jamal and Patta to manage a static defense of Chittor. The fort fell on February 25, 1568, after Jamal was fatally shot by Akbar's own musket. Phul Kanwar led the final Johar, and a brutal massacre of 30,000 civilians followed. Though Akbar honored the incredible bravery of Jamal and Patta with statues at the Agra fort, Mewar learned its ultimate lesson. They vowed never to rely on a static, fortress-bound defense again. This brought forth the legendary era of asymmetrical resistance under Maharana Pratap. Pratap's grand strategy operated on three distinct fronts. First, absolute diplomatic defiance. He outright rejected 4 separate peace missions sent by Akbar. Second, calculated military action. Secured by the financial backing of Prime Minister Bhama Shah, Pratap funded a 25,000-strong army for over a decade, dealing massive blows to the Mughals at Haldighati and Diwar. And third, cultural output. Even while running a guerrilla campaign, he established a secure capital at Chavand, birthing a new school of painting under Nasiruddin and fostering rich academic scholarship. The Battle of Haldighati on June 18, 1576, became the classic showcase of Mewar's topographical tactics. The terrain itself became a weapon. A narrow mountain bottleneck completely neutralized the Mughals' heavy artillery and the immense numerical superiority of Man Singh's infantry. In the pass, Mewar deployed its war elephants, Luna and Ramprasad, directly against the Mughal beasts. Concurrently, Punjab Heel and his tribal archers occupied the high crags, raining down devastation on Mughal logistics and instilling a lasting dread of mountain ambushes. To understand why Pratap succeeded, we must compare him to his contemporary, Rao Chandrasen of Marwar. Both maintained an absolute refusal to bend to Mughal sovereignty. However, while Chandrasen was forced onto flat desert plains unfavorable for hit-and-run tactics, Pratap leveraged the ideal sanctuary of the Aravallis. Logistically, Chandrasen lacked funding, whereas Pratap possessed the deep financial backing of Bhama Shah and the unyielding loyalty of the Bhil tribes. Consequently, while Chandrasen's resistance largely faded with his death in 1581, Pratap established a permanent base at Chavand, sparking an enduring resurgence. This logistical and geographical edge triggered the Marathon of Mewar, a massive territorial resurgence. The turning point came at the Battle of Dewar in 1582, where Prince Amar Singh decisively slew the Mughal commander, Sultan Khan. Mewar forces systematically dismantled the core Mughal occupation network, crushing 4 key outposts. By 1585, Akbar's final invasion under Jagannath Kachwaha exhausted itself against the terrain. Before his death in 1597, Pratap consolidated his capital at Chawand and reclaimed virtually the entirety of Mewar, leaving only the static fortresses of Chittor and Mandalgarh in Mughal hands. By 1615, decades of ceaseless warfare brought both sides to a pragmatic peace under Maharana Amar Singh. The resulting treaty balanced key concessions with crucial retentions. Mewar formally relinquished absolute sovereignty, agreed to send a 1,000 cavalry contingent to the imperial army, and required the crown prince to physically attend the Mughal court. In return, the ruling Maharana was permanently exempted from personal attendance, and marital alliances with the Mughals were explicitly forbidden, preserving their bloodline prestige. Crucially, Chittor fort was returned, but on one strict condition: it could never be repaired or rebuilt. With open warfare paused, Mewar pioneered a new strategy: passive resistance through architecture. Maharana Karan Singh began construction on the island palace of Jug Mandir, which provocatively provided shelter to the rebel Mughal prince Khurram, the future Shah Jahan. Later, Jagat Singh I funded a massive cultural renaissance, constructing the Grand Jagdish Temple. But Jagat Singh pushed the envelope too far. He boldly began rebuilding the ruined walls of Chittor fort, directly breaking the 1615 treaty. Shah Jahan immediately dispatched an army under Sadullah Khan to demolish the work, bringing this era of peaceful patronage to a sudden end. When Aurangzeb ascended the Mughal throne, Mewar found a fierce champion in Maharana Raj Singh. Raj Singh weaponized every diplomatic, military, and cultural lever available. He used the traditional Tikka Daur hunting ritual as a tactical cover to systematically raid and capture Mughal outposts. Diplomatically, he officially opposed Aurangzeb's jizya tax, married Princess Charumati of Rupangad to explicitly thwart Aurangzeb's plans to marry her, and formed a powerful Rathore-Sisodia military alliance to back Jodhpur. Culturally, he turned Mewar into a sanctuary, protecting sacred Hindu idols, fleeing Mughal iconoclasm and commissioning the massive Rajsamand Lake. As the Mughal Empire began to fracture, a new geopolitical crisis emerged. Emperor Bahadur Shah I attempted to crush Rajput autonomy, forcing historic rivals into a unified front. In 1708, Amar Singh II of Mewar, Ajit Singh of Marwar, and Savai Jai Singh of Amer signed the Debari Pact, a mutual defense treaty designed to dictate terms to a fading Mughal center. But Mewar attached a strict matrimonial catch. Amar Singh's daughter would marry Savai Jai Singh of Amer, on the absolute condition that her son must inherit the Amer throne. It successfully secured their immediate kingdoms, but sowed the seeds for devastating future civil wars. By the mid-18th century, the geopolitical threat shifted from Delhi to the Deccan as the Maratha Empire expanded, successfully extracting ruinous tribute from Mewar. To counter this, an unprecedented summit convened on July 17, 1734, the Hurda Conference. Presided over by Jagat Singh II of Mewar, an extraordinary gathering of Rajput kings formed a unified military coalition. They agreed to a joint defense pact and a unified campaign at Rampura. Yet, before firing a single shot, the alliance collapsed entirely, doomed by the internal egos, rivalries, and personal disputes of the kings. This internal decay dragged the region into its lowest political nadir during the era of Bhim Singh. A chaotic diplomatic spark ignited when Mewar's princess Krishna Kumari, originally betrothed to the late ruler of Marwar, was re-betrothed to Jagat Singh II of Jaipur. The new ruler of Marwar, Man Singh, viewed this as an intolerable insult to his state's honor and declared total war. Jaipur and Marwar clashed in the bloody, devastating Battle of Gingoli in 1807, draining the remaining resources of all three states. In 1810, to end the ruinous conflict, the young princess was tragically poisoned on the advice of Amir Khan Pindari, symbolizing the absolute collapse of independent Rajput agency. With its military and economy completely broken, Mewar reached the end of its independent foreign policy. On January 13, 1818, British Representative Charles Metcalfe and Mewar Representative Ajit Singh signed a treaty of parmountcy. Mewar traded its centuries-old independence for absolute British military protection against Maratha and Pindri raids. It is a striking historical reality. A dynasty that had successfully survived the Delhi Sultanate, the Mughal Empire at its absolute zenith, and the Maratha expansion, finally submitted to British administrative dominance to preserve its crown. Looking back across 3 centuries, Mewar's strategy adapted completely to the adversary it faced. Against the Mughals, they maintained aggressive guerrilla campaigns, ultimately retaining internal sovereignty and cultural autonomy. Against the Marathas, unable to stand alone, their pan-Rajput coalitions failed, forcing them to yield ruinous financial tribute. Finally, dealing with the British, a demilitarized Mewar chose absolute submission, successfully preserving its royal titles and borders under total imperial paramountcy. This is the evolution of Mewari survival. They evolved from the era of static fortification at Chittor, to the mobile guerrilla warfare of Pratap in the Aravallis, to the calculated vassalage and patronage of Raj Singh, and finally, to the diplomatic paramountcy of Bhim Singh. The Mewar dynasty remains the longest reigning in the world not simply because they fought the hardest, but because they possessed the pragmatic brilliance to know exactly when to change the rules of the game.